Welcome to this lesson. In this lesson, I will be teaching you how to use selectors in CSS. We can just call it CSS selectors. We have all of these elements here. We have parent box, we have children. How do we select them in CSS? So let's give some of these things ID so that we can use that one too. ID, just give it parents. Let's just make it parents, and let's give one of the children ID. Let's give this one ID. Let's just give it ID. Give it my name. Okay, let's give it something meaningful. Let's give it let's make it let's just give it a name, box. I can't think about a good name now, but let's give it box. So okay, now let's select them with CSS and see the power of CSS. Let's talk about universal selector. Universal selector, it's used to select all the elements on the web page. So if we want to select all the elements in the web page and add some styles to them, then we can use this asterisk sign. So anything we apply here will affect all the elements on the page. How would that happen? Okay, let me just go back to some already baked code. You can see we have something here before, right? So for you to see it properly, how universal selector works, so this one selects everything on the page, and whatever I add to this side, it will affect all of these ones here. You can see on the screen. For you to see it in action, this one selects all the elements on the page, and we use it to create box sizing, border box, as you'll see in some other tutorials on this channel or in other videos for this tutorial. You'll see how it was properly explained, but what you have to know that this one is used to select all the elements on the page, and we use this one to add border box to all of them. So in this case, there is something here. You can see that there is always a space here, there is a space here, there is a space up here, and most of the time you don't need that space, right? And always like that, that is what we always have. There's always extra margin, extra padding anytime you create an element, but you don't want that when you are working in the real world, and that is why you always see something like box sizing, border box, padding 0 up here, padding 0, and margin 0. So we set everything to default so that we will not have them initially. You can see we don't have any margin here, we don't have any padding here. So you can see that it has affected these ones too. So because we are dealing with a universal selector, so whatever we put here will affect all the elements on the page. Then let's talk about element selector. You can select HTML elements with their tags. So for example, I can select this div, all the div here on the page with their tag. I can just say div width 400 pixel, height 400 pixel, and border. So we have 1 pixel solid red, so that you can see it. You can see that we have them here, the parents and the children. This is the parents, but because they have the same size, that is why the children moved out of it. You can see that they have tiny border and the parent has bigger border because another child is in it, but other cannot be inside it because they have the same size. That's why they are outside. So that is it. We select all the div elements on the page and we apply this to them. What if we want to select with another thing, because it wants the parent to be different from the children? Then you cannot use the div element because it will not make sense. You want to select them differently based on different properties, different classes, different criteria. So we have other form of selectors in CSS you can use, and that takes us to another one, and we call it class selector. And it means we can select the element with its class name. And let's just look the class name of the element, parent box, and we can just do dot. Dot means we want to select an element with its class name. We want to use dot in CSS. That is what you mean. Just say parent parent box. So we have selected this element like this one. So we can add CSS to it as we want. Let's just say width 400 pixel, height 400 pixel, and border 1 pixel solid red, so that we can see it. You can see here is it. And we can also select the children. So what do we mean by class? You know that different elements can have the same class, they can belong to the same class. So these are the children. We can select all of them by their class name. So with their class name, let's just do this dot child box, just do width 100 pixel and height 100 pixel, and let's just do border is just 1 pixel solid red. Boom, you can see there. Can you see that? So we have them on the screen. So we have selected the children, we have added the color and width to them. Now we have selected parent box and its children with their class names. Then we can do something else by using ID selector. So let us choose ID selector. You can see here we have this one. It is only this one that has ID. Then we can select it with its ID. So that ID is meant for this one alone. You cannot have another ID that is box here. This is what I mean. Don't get it wrong. We cannot have this one ID here. And if we have ID here, this one cannot be box, because ID is identity, and identity is always unique. It cannot be the same as that of another person. It's like saying your fingerprint is like mine. So it doesn't make sense. So this one must have different ID. It can be both, right? That one is still correct. So, but ID cannot be the same thing for different elements, but class can be different, because for instance, class can be different. Maybe you are a software developer, I'm a software developer, that's another class. But ID, your ID is different from mine. So ID must be unique. So that is why they cannot have the same ID. That's it. Then let's select it with its ID. Let's just do, if you want to select with ID, you use this hash and the name of the ID box, and let's select it with, so that we see it as something different. Let's give it bigger size and height 600, bigger height. You see, it's now bigger. That's too much. Let's make it just 200 so that we can see it. Okay, yeah, it is bigger than the rest. So you can see we only select just the one with ID box, and it doesn't affect other because ID is unique. So there's another thing I want you to remember I forgot to talk about in the class selector, and let me just remind you. In this case, we can have multiple classes. An element can belong to multiple classes. We can also have this one to be something else. We can add another class like main. We can still add another one, container. Anything you do to this main and container will affect this parent box. Let's try it. Let's try one of them. Selector container, and let's say what can we do to it so that we can see it. Okay, border radius, so that you can see it's 50 pixel. Boom, you can see it has affected it because it has the class to container. So we can have multiple classes for an element, but we cannot have multiple ID. Don't do that. So it is unique. So we cannot have multiple ID, but we can have multiple classes. So that's it. Then let's talk about another thing you will use often. Descendant selector. How do you select something as descendant? In this case, these ones, they are descendants of this one. So if you want to select this one with descendant selector, how do you do that? You can just do class parent box dot child child box. The meaning of this is that you are selecting the child box that is inside parent box. This is important in case we have another element that has child box. So maybe we have a container box, right? And that container box also has a child box. It means it will not affect the child box that is inside the container box because we have prefixed it with parent box. That is, if it is only in parent box, that is when it can select the child box. So it cannot select it if it is in another element that does not have this parent box class. That is what we mean. So it must be a descendant of this before it can be selected as child box. So then let's start it so that you can see it. Border. So border 1 pixel solid red. Boom, can you see that? So it selected all of the 3 elements inside it. So that's it. So we can give them height or we can give them width and other things if we like. So we have selected the child box which is inside of parent box. That is the meaning. Child box is inside, is a descendant of parent box. That is what we mean by descendant selector. So you know that I wrote space here, and this space means that we use space to separate them, because if you don't separate them like this, if you do it like this, right, what does that mean? That one is different. It means that it has both parent box and child box, class. That's the meaning. If you do it like this, it must have both parent box class. You can see this one has explained it here. You can see parent box and child box. So if you do it like this, that's what it means. That element must have both parent box class and child box class. What do I mean by that? I mean that for us to select this one, if you do it like that, it means that this one must have both parent box and child box. You can see that. You can see this one has a parent box and child box, right? As class and whatever. So you can see it select just it. So if you go back here and give it a space, it will select all of them. You see that? If you can see, the reason is that this one has parent box and child box as its class. It means that you are selecting any element that has these two classes, parent box and child box. It must have both parent box and child box as its class, and the only one that has it is this one, right? So that is why it is the one that is selected if there is no space. But if there is space, it will select all of them. Boom, you see that? So that is it. That is how it works. Yes, now let's talk about child selector. This greater than is used to denote that you want to select child. So if you want to select the child of the parent box, then we can use that. Let's just do class parent box, and div. That means we want to select all the div elements inside of parent box that are children of parent box. So we are selecting the child, right? The child of parent box that is div. So if it is anything that is div will be selected. That's what this one will do. Let's just say border 1 pixel solid red. You see, it has selected all of them. But if this one has, let's give, okay, the one that has ID, so let's select that one alone with ID box. So it will select just that one. You see that? It select just that one. So this means we are just selecting the child of the parent box. You can use all of these CSS selectors in JavaScript. Query selector, so you can use them. And then let's move on to another one. This one is used to select the next sibling to the current one, the next sibling to the current one. So how do we do that? Let's select box reverse to this one here, right? Because it has ID box. Then we want to select the one that is next to it, which is this one. So you can now do next plus div. So it will select the one that is after the box, the element with ID box. So it select the div elements. Border, so that you can see it, 1 pixel, solid red. You see that? Boom! You can see it has selected the last one. So that is what is called adjacent sibling selector. That is the next sibling to this one here. This one is the current one you selected, and you want to select its sibling that is next to it. That's what this one does. So we select the div, which is this one in this case. The next thing is general sibling selector. We want to select the sibling or the sibling of a particular element. All we just have to do is we select the element itself. Let's say box. In this case, we have box, and we want to select all its siblings, like this one now. All of them that belong to the same parent, all of them, they belong to this one. So let's select all of the siblings of this one. So any element that is a sibling to this one, they will be selected. So all of the siblings will be selected, and we use this sign to do it. You see that? I just say div, any div element, or we can also use class child box. So it will select all of the siblings of the box. So that is what is called general sibling selector. And let's just do border, 1 pixel, solid red, and see what happens. Why is it that we just get one? Because the only one that is next to that is sibling in that case, is just child box, right? But let's move this one down. Let's see what will happen. You see now? So you can see it has selected both of them that are next to it. So that is it. That's it. But if we move it to the bottom, let's see what will happen. See, box is now the one that we are selecting. Is sibling is now at the bottom. Let's see if it will select them. You can see it doesn't select them. But if we move it to the top, so what it's doing is that we select this one, then all of the next siblings to it will be selected. So this is the box, and all of its siblings will be selected. It's working. So let's move it downward and see if it is still work. So it doesn't work, so it has to be up them. So we select this box and any other siblings that are next to it. So this one, they are next to it, it will be selected. Boom! That's why we have this. So now we are done with selector.
Hey! Have you been struggling to learn and build projects with JavaScript? Oh no, you too can code. People like you have been struggling to understand and build projects with JavaScript because you have been learning with the wrong resources and make everything so difficult to learn. And there is nobody to be there for you anytime you are stuck. That is why I have put together my long experience of working with JavaScript, and I also took a year of my life to provide solutions to the problem beginners always face in learning and building projects with JavaScript. Now you can learn with a tested and trusted program that makes use of simple examples and amazing illustrations that make everything so easy to learn. And my team and I will always guide you, mentor you, and always be there for you anytime you are stuck. So, what are you waiting for? Click the link in this post right now to start learning JavaScript the easy way. I will teach you JavaScript to be unstoppable. See you soon.